What's up, A to Z Sports Nashville? Happy Friday. Welcome into the A to Z Sports Morning Show. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, joined again by my friend Ryan Roberts, and we've got an exciting free agent preview episode for you today, going through the Titans who are set to become free agents and hit the market next week, as well as looking at the rest of the league. Who are our free agent crushes? Who are the guys that are about to be available come Monday morning when legal tampering period begins that the Titans need to target? Or maybe more importantly, who are the guys the Titans should avoid? We're going to talk through all of that and more, including some news that has broken in the last 24 hours today that has to do with the Titans and the AFC South. Got a very exciting episode for you this morning. Jump in the comments. Hope you're looking alive on a Friday morning. Ryan, are you looking alive on a Friday morning? Hello.
I'm really excited about the show, man. We've been doing just NFL draft talk the last couple of days, but this one's really fun because we're talking about all layers of building a roster today. We're going to talk about retention of the roster. We're going to talk about free agency. We're going to talk about trade. We're going to talk about how trades and free agent signings for other organizations can completely shift your just perspective on how to build your team going into the 2025 NFL season. So all of those things I'm super excited about to talk about every layer of a roster building process. But folks, before we get into this deep conversation here, make sure this morning that you don't forget to share the show. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure to hit that share button in the bottom right corner and get it on your feed. If you're watching live on YouTube, take that YouTube link and send it to a friend in your life or one of your group chats. Just find that Titans fan that you know and let them know that A to Z Sports is talking free agency, tampering period, trades, all of these roster retention conversations. You can also repost on Twitter X to help spread the word as well. Don't forget that hit that thumbs up button and leave a like on the show before we go and get into it here on a wonderful Friday morning.
Yeah, let's get it started. Welcome into the A to Z Sports live on a Friday morning. Every weekday morning, we are here live on the A to Z Sports YouTube channel and on Facebook and on Twitch at 8 Central Time, streaming across the internet. Links tweeted out segment by segment by our Twitter feed at ATOZ Sports. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok for more Titans coverage throughout the year, 24/7, 365. Also, leave a 5-star Google review for us on A to Z Sports. We got to thank our sponsors for making the show happen today and helping out you guys at home. Wilson County Hyundai. Make Wilson County Hyundai a part of your new car buying process in Lebanon and WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Bone and Joint Institute, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedics and sports medicine. Bone and Joint TN.org, and our friends at Bart Durham Injury Law. A crash can change your life forever, but help is just a click away at bartdurham.com. Speaking of the Bone and Joint Institute, Ryan, we did have that Doc Talk segment run on the YouTube channel yesterday.
I actually watched it. I watched it this morning. It was good. Very good.
Well done. I hope that those in the comments, those listening with us live this morning, got a chance to listen to it. If not, lucky you, it's still up there. We haven't taken it down yet. So go check it out over on the YouTube channel. Had a chat for about a 10-minute conversation with an orthopedic surgeon over there at the Bone and Joint Institute. Very informative. Gave me a lot of insight into what a stress reaction is, which is what, of course, Abdul Carter is dealing with. And, what it may mean for him now in the draft process and what it may mean for him down the road in his NFL career. So go check that out after you're done with today's show. Now, before we dive into the Titans free agents who we want to see stay, who we want to see go, and before we dive into the rest of the league and look at the free agents across the landscape, a couple of news items we wanted to touch on this morning, Ryan, some things that happened in the last 24 hours. First of which was a trade, an inter-AFC South trade. We saw Christian Kirk traded to the Texans right before being released. And oh my goodness, can you see that my graphic work was so shoddy this morning? You can see my eyeball just kind of peeking through right there on the graphic. Did everybody see that?
It's just a little creepy.
Yeah, just don't mind me. I'm going to move. There was a deal made right before Christian Kirk was set to be released by the Jaguars to trade him to the Texans for a 2026 7th-round pick that originally belonged to the Rams, as Diana Rossini originally reported. So, a move from the Jaguars to the Texans, a big step up in competition for Christian Kirk, a move that is in line with a number of things that the Jaguars have been doing the past week to essentially gut their roster. The new regime has come in and decided, yeah, we're going to start over. We're going to get some new guys in here. We're going to get some fresh blood. Trevor Lawrence and our foundational pieces, Josh Hines Allen, like these guys are going to stick around, but the auxiliary pieces need to be refreshed, and Christian Kirk being moved off of from a cost saving standpoint first and foremost. But what I want to mention about this, Ryan, as I throw our actual graphic back up there, is that I think this is yet another data point in the argument that teams kind of a while ago quit caring about intra-division trades. They don't really mind making a move with a team in their own division as much as folks on Twitter want to make it out to be. And so just like kind of a PSA, I suppose, all of your comments on Twitter of, well, they'd never trade in the division. They'd never move that pick in the division. They would, though. They would. They don't really care anymore.
It's a really interesting move too. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, Easton, but someone had put out that I guess the conversation had happened just not as much with someone in the Jacksonville sector of this conversation, but just in general of the Jaguars aren't offloading some of these contracts and making these decisions based upon just strictly money, right? Like obviously money matters, and especially as we're about to hit the tampering period and free agency and all those types of things. But this is more, I think, a reset for the Jaguars, which is interesting, right? Like they just want to they want to make sure that they have their foundational pieces intact, like you said, but they're just kind of trimming the fat, for the lack of a better phrase there, right? They're trying to get rid of some veterans that maybe don't fit what they're trying to build potentially in Jacksonville. But I agree 100%. This is we hyper fixate on that type of stuff, right? Like, oh, you cannot trade to a team that you're going to see twice a year, plus, like depending on what happens with the playoffs and all those types of things. But I do think that it's a very interesting cog just to see that, and also Tennessee is a little bit of an interesting one if we're just talking about like Jacksonville moving forward here, because Tennessee's wide receivers going into last season, you were like, okay, that's pretty nice, right? You're like, okay, they just got Stephon Diggs on top of Nico Collins. They have Tank Dell. Well, now just 12 months removed from that conversation, or less than 12 months removed, Stephon Diggs is in free agency after having the injury. Tank Dell was injured once again, and he's banged up. And now the Houston Texans are going into a little bit of the bargain bin, right? Of a Christian Kirk who's coming off of his worst year in several years now. I know he was banged up, but still a unproductive and injury riddled season. So interested just from a Tennessee Titans scope of evaluating the rest of the division here, right? Jacksonville is clearly being intentional of trying to find their foundational core pieces, but the Houston Texans are, I don't want to say panic. It's not a panic move necessarily, but this wide receiver room, and I think this offense just in general, is going to look quite a bit different than what they looked in 2024 if we're comparing it that way.
Well, it's had kind of a desperate feel, right? Because we've been hearing for a couple of weeks now about how the Texans are looking in every nook and cranny of the wide receiver market. The free agency wide receiver group it's not great, but there have been a number of trade opportunities. You hear Cooper Kupp, they're offering a trade up for him, and the Texans are a name that's listed as a team that's interested. Deebo Samuel, they were the same way. I've even heard Brandon Ayuk, a guy that they're barking up that tree. They end up going with what seems to Devontae Adams, by the way. I'd imagine they're barking up that tree. And all of these feel like, we saw you do it with Steph Diggs last year. We've seen this movie before with a lot of teams where, you get the washed up guy, name value. How does it really, you're trying to like make a move that puts you over the top, but is this going to be the one to do it? And while Christian Kirk is not a move that puts you over the top, I do think that it's probably probably the best outcome for them, in my opinion, when we include all those guys I just mentioned. I think that Kirk is because of course Tank Dell is not going to see the field at all this year. Stephon Diggs is a free agent under contract. I don't know. Coming off an ACL, either way, he's a big TBD.
I think he's in free agency.
I think he's a free agent, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, with his injury, he's also TBD, and so it's a thin room. They've got their one in Nico Collins for sure. And they've got, John Mechie is a guy that's up and coming. They've got some pieces, but a guy like Christian Kirk, I think, is going to be able to step in relatively nicely and fill a lot of the roles that a Tank Dell did, just to a lesser extent.
Yeah, well, I think it all depends. I mean, not all depends. It mostly depends on just health for Christian Kirk, right? Like he had
Yep.
a little bit of some injuries early in his career with the Cardinals, and then has been relatively healthy his first couple years with the Jaguars. But this past year, obviously, was a little bit of a lost season for him. Only playing in I think 8 games total this past year. So it's a nice piece, complimentary, as long as the Texans are able to keep Nico Collins healthy, right? Like I think we saw last season, it's a much different offense when he's healthy versus not healthy, which is to be expected with your number one receiver. I'm just interested in just kind of these moving parts overall with the Houston Texans because going into last year, they were the hot team that everybody was talking about, right? Like we saw great things in 2023. They were going to make that huge ascension now to be a Super Bowl contender. Like they're trending in that direction. They were still a very good team, but we did see that there were some warts on this team offensively. And CJ Stroud obviously is a very good young quarterback. So continuing to put good targets around him is very important. It's just going to be very interesting that in one offseason, just one season, this division's going to look a lot different, man. Like it's going to
Hmm.
look a whole lot different. Tennessee's going to have a new starting quarterback. They're going to be in year 2 under Brian Callahan. We're going to have the Houston Texans offense look a little bit different than the year before. We're going to talk about the Jaguars, a complete
Right.
overhaul. So this is a
Daniel Jones is going to
division.
be the starting quarterback for the Colts.
Don't
Right.
say
Exactly.
that.
So
Don't
much
say that.
news. So
That'd be
much
so
news.
sad. So sad. But it really
I mean,
is
it's
just kind of
going to be so
interesting.
sad. Not will
Yeah.
be. It's
Yeah.
going to be so sad.
Uh, I just
Manifesting.
I just don't want to, I have no
You're not
love for the
wishing that
Colts or anything, but
that
like,
bad
so
juju
I
on
don't have any rooting
Indianapolis.
interest in the Colts, but like, I don't want to see Daniel Jones start for any franchise, to be honest. So
I
let's
can
not
at
look
least get
into it.
behind that. Well, speaking of Jaguars news, one more thing from yesterday. They decided to release Evan Ingram as a part of their overhaul. And here's a quick list of players informed of their release this week, according to Adam Schefter. You got Devontae Adams, Joey Bosa, Evan Ingram, Tyler Lockett, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Javon Hargrave, Gardner Minshew, Jamal Williams, Devin Duvernay, Draymond Jones, Roy Robertson Harris, Rayshon Jenkins, George Fant, and Raekwon Davis. These are all guys that we have seen released in the past week. That number is sure to increase over the coming week. But the one we're talking about here, Evan Ingram being released in Jacksonville. And again, to your point, Ryan, not necessarily, I mean, it is a money move, but it's also a tear it down to the studs move because it's only a cap saving of just under $6 million, which isn't, useful, but not the kind of move you make. Not the way that Jacksonville is set up financially right now. They're not desperate for those $6 million, and they're eating a dead money charge of $13.5 million. So I think that is a pretty clear signal that, hey, we're making some money moves, but largely speaking, we're trying to get a little reset going here with our new regime and our around our quarterback that we're going to try to make this work because he's under a big money contract that we've got to make work somehow, some way.
Yep. Well, and as we keep talking, because people put in the chat, I saw a couple people say that my volume was low, but then others are saying it's not. So if people just kind of want to put in there as far as like the state of my volume, that would be very appreciated for all. But yeah, they are a team that's going to be a very interesting team to watch because they have some foundational needs overall. If we're talking about the Jaguars under Liam Cohen now, right? Like we're talking about offensive tackle potentially at left tackle being a spot that they could upgrade. It's fine. Okay. Thank you so much. How are some people saying low and
They're gaslighting you, Ryan. Just ignore them. Just we've
so
we've done
weird.
we've done a whole week at this point. It's good. It's fine. We're in good
I
shape.
I have not messed with these settings since yesterday. Everything was fine yesterday. This is impossible that it's messed up this bad without me even touching anything, folks. But
That's right.
thank you so much for the
It's
comments, though.
classic gaslighting. Andre says
Oh,
Will Bowling and Rhett Bryan over at 1045 keep saying Daniel Jones could be an option for the Titans and get mad when you clown them for it. Listen. I know Rhett. I'm familiar with Will. That Daniel Jones is not an option for the Titans. Could Daniel Jones be a guy you bring in if you also draft a rookie? Yeah, he could. So take it easy on my boys over there. Would it be exciting? Are they hyping it up as exciting? Then that's a different conversation. But if they're just saying, "Hey, it's on the table," yeah, it's on the table. It is on the table.
well, here's the thing though with those types of things. What are the intentions of Daniel Jones for your team, right? If you're bringing in Daniel Jones to be a backup quarterback and maybe even bring a rookie quarterback along for a couple
Right.
games,
Be a competition guy.
who cares, right? Like that doesn't matter. But if you're,
Well,
but if you're stabling and being like, hey, Daniel Jones is the future of our franchise, that's much different than him being maybe a bridge for a couple of games for a rookie quarterback too. It's very different.
yeah, and people in the chat saying that it's not that you're low, it's that I'm very hot. So I'm backing my mic off. Hopefully that'll equalize everybody's volume. In all seriousness, the story on Jones and why he, I think makes a lot of sense for an Indianapolis is that he's a great guy to have come in if you need somebody to be the competition in the offseason, to push the guy that you want to be the guy and still lose, right? He's the perfect mark to be your actually competitive, but still definitely going to lose the competition guy. And so for Anthony Richardson, that's probably the best kind of, option for them in Indianapolis, and why I think that that's a very strong possibility. One more news item before we get to the Titans free agents, and that's the chunk of today's show. But how about this? We saw, I think this was, yesterday, that Trey Hendrickson, being the odd man out in the Bengals' 3 offseason contract priorities, has been granted permission to seek a trade after a league-leading 17.5 sacks and an all-pro nod in 2024. Hendrickson is being given permission to find a new home after 4 seasons in Cincinnati, according to Diana Rossini. I only bring this up because the Titans desperately need edge help. And I've been mentioning for a couple of weeks now that we know the Titans' new front office philosophy, the way that they want to go about things. They've made it very clear the style of team building they're going to be adopting. But even the most rigid teams, in terms of their philosophy, their style, make exceptions sometimes. And especially a team like the Titans, where their stated philosophy works a lot better when you're already in decent shape, right? The idea of we're going to use free agency to supplement. We're going to build through the draft. We're not going to get tilted on, we're not going to make big money moves for guys. We're not going to overpay for guys. Like, that is the way to operate when you are in decent shape. But sometimes you need a little kickstart. And I'm not saying it's likely to happen, but I am saying it is firmly on my radar for the Titans. Depending on what happens with Hendrickson, wouldn't be surprised, and the connections, of course, the Titans have to him and the Bengals, wouldn't be surprised if they bark up that tree at least to just see. Right now they're offering to have him traded. Right. What exactly that trade market's going to be, I don't know. But would he be a dramatic improvement to the Titans' edge room? Yes, he would. And so to me, it all depends on, it all depends on, I guess, what the cost is in the trade and then what kind of contract he's going to want. But if they were to break their offseason rules this year, he's kind of at the top of my list of guys that might be in that camp.
I'd be all over him if I was the Tennessee Titans. At least, like, I would be exploring heavily personally. I mean, I look at him, Easton. It's like, does he have some deficiencies as a player as far as like against the run at times, right? Like, he's not a stellar run defender, sure, but he is. Last 2 years, he's had 35 sacks, right? Like, he leads all of the NFL in sacks the last 2 years. 35 sacks the last 2 years. The Tennessee Titans this past year had 32 as a team in total, right? So immediate upgrade as far as from a pass rush perspective, like literally at 17.5 each of the past 2 years. This is one of the best sack artists in the NFL, and he's been ultra productive. I mean, the only year that he wasn't overly productive, he was injured, right? Like, he was banged up. So this is an immediate help. I would be all over it because I don't think it's going to cost you a lot in draft capital. Like, I've heard a couple of things out there right now, and people are saying like 3rd round pick potentially. And obviously you're going to have to pay a contract after that, right? So it's not just the capital that's going to be the conversation. It's going to be the monetary value as well. But man, if we're talking about a guy that can immediately upgrade a room instantly, like we love the Princely Uman Mielins and some of these guys that may potentially get in the second round. But the thing is that you could still get that player on top of getting a Trey Hendrickson potentially, depending on how you wheel and deal this thing correctly. So I would be very interested if I was the Tennessee Titans or any pass rush needy team, because I think Trey Hendrickson is about as easy of a slam dunk acquisition as you're going to find from a pass rush perspective. I mean, the proof is in the production. He has been a tremendous player for multiple years now, for a long time.
Yeah, and Curtis in the comments saying, just swap him Landry. 1 for 1, Landry for Hendrickson. Who says no? I think you followed that up somewhere, Curtis. Yeah, package deal. Give him Key and Landry. Okay, that's a sweetener I would be willing to do. And looking at the way that you guys are reacting here in the comments, Daniel dreaming about the idea of Hendrickson next to an Abdul Carter would be an outrageous front. Imagine Hendrickson, Sweat, Simmons, Carter.
Good luck, man. Good luck. Yeah.
Good luck. Exactly. So, all right, we are now actually going to get into the Titans free agents, which I know some of you in the comments have been clamoring for. We appreciate your patience. Got to get some of those news items out of the way. So, I'm gonna hit you. We're gonna show you in a moment a full list of all. I believe the number is 30 Titans free agents, both restricted and unrestricted. But I've lumped them all into one graphic. We're gonna go through all of them, and we're gonna ask two questions that we need you to start pondering. The first question is, who is the Titans free agent, or maybe a couple? If you got a couple, you just can't decide who you are dying to see them bring back, and who is the one or two guys that you think that you absolutely do not want them to bring back. And I guess maybe guys that you're afraid. Let's phrase it this way, because there's some guys on this list that they're obviously not bringing back. So like, let's not name those guys. Who are the guys you're afraid they might bring back that you're hoping they don't? Okay, those are the questions we've got for you. I'll throw those in the chat in a moment, but go ahead and be thinking. We'll start with the first question. I'll go ahead and throw it in there. Who is the one or two free agents the Titans must retain in 2025? And if you need to see the full graphic to make up your mind, we'll have that up for you in just a minute. But that question is now in the comments for you guys to respond to. We'll get to the Titans free agents in just a moment, but not before I tell you all about our new friends over at Bart Durham Injury Law. A crash can change your life forever, and help is only a click away at bartdurham.com. Your big truck wreck is their fight for justice. They want to be able to help you anytime, 24/7. Get your legal questions answered at 615-242-9000. The attorneys at Bart Durham Injury Law believe that you deserve to be paid, and they're available to meet with you whenever, wherever is most convenient, including virtually over the phone. So visit their website at bartdurham.com for all the current news, blogs, or to contact and live chat with them. They've been in business since 1975, so they have 50 years of experience dealing with all kinds of automobile wrecks. They're located right here locally in Capitol View, Nashville, and they can fight for anybody in Kentucky or Tennessee that has been in an auto accident, led, of course, by Blair Durham, a Marine veteran, a great Tennessean, a great guy, doing it right over there at Bart Durham Injury Law. Let them help you at bartdurham.com.
Make sure, folks, before we get into the retention of the Titans free agents potentially coming back in 2025, make sure you are hitting that like button for us right now. You could do so whether you are on our YouTube, on Facebook. You could share on both platforms as well. If you're a Twitch user, also make sure to hit that like button and share from there. And we will continue to get into some Tennessee Titans free agency and retention potentially for players that you already know of going back into the 2025 season.
So let's go ahead and throw it up here. Here's the list of all 30 Titans free agents, both restricted and unrestricted. Here are all the guys the Titans have to make decisions on in the next couple of days. And I'll just read them out real quick. We've got quarterback Mason Rudolph, running back Julius Chestnut, running back Joshua Kelly, wide receiver NWI, wide receiver Tay Martin, wide receiver Tyler Boyd, tight end Nick Vanette, and then some offensive linemen, Dylan Radens, Daniel Brunskill, Corey Levin, Andrew Rupchich, defensive linemen, Sebastian Joseph Day, James Lynch, Marlon Davidson, Keandre Coburn, and TK McClendon Jr. A glut of linebackers, Jack Gibbons, Luke Gifford, Otis Reese the fourth, Chance Campbell, Garrett Wallow, and Jerome Baker, and Raekwon McMillan. And then some DBs, Justin Hardy, Quandre Diggs, Darrell Baker Jr., Mike Brown. And then all three of your specialists, by the way. I knew this individually, but I didn't put it together that it's all of them until I looked it up this morning. Ryan Stonehouse, Morgan Cox, and Nick Foles are all free agents in some form or fashion. Now, Ryan Stonehouse is a restricted free agent, so it's a little bit of a different situation, but still, they have to make a decision on the restricted guys as well. That being said, letting you guys scan this graphic. I'm going to leave it up here for a little bit so you guys can look. Ryan, I'm going to send you to the chat. What are the folks saying in terms of our first question? Who is the free agent that the Titans must retain in 2025?
We have a lot of NWI in the chat. That was
not surprising.
Yeah, there was I think there was 5 in a row to start us
here.
Jeez. Yeah, we got NWIs all over the place.
Captain
NWI,
America over here.
Richie said NWI and NWI, so he wants 2 NWIs coming back apparently.
Okay.
We had Steven who said he wants them to bring back Ryan Stonehouse and NWI. We got Chris with an NWI as well. We have a Dylan Radens from Rashid Jenkins. We have Sebastian Joseph Day from Jason. We also have Mr. Tyler Boyd from Lewis. He wants Tyler Boyd to come on back. We have NWI again. Someone said bring back Will Levis. I think he's already on the roster. Daniel says Sebastian Joseph Day. We got Sebastian Joseph Day again from Kenneth. NWI. Sebastian Joseph Day. We have Sebastian Joseph Day again from John McDaniels. We have NWI is a must from Jason Brown. NWI again from JR. We got Sebastian Joseph Day from 6. Don't know how to don't know how to say that, and I'm not going to get caught up on it. So then we got Andre who says got to bring back Dylan Radins as well. Josh agrees with that sentiment. Dylan Radins, NWI, and Sebastian Joseph Day. So he wants all of them to come back. NWI from Jay. Stonehouse is restricted. David added. Yep, we talked about that a little bit. We have Darius Horton who says Diggs, you can get Javon Holland. So I don't know if he's saying that you should bring back Diggs and go get Javon Holland to make a
Okay.
pretty nice
He's cooking.
tandem there.
He wants the back end to be strong.
So I saw a run here, Easton. A lot of Quandre Diggs in like the midsection. We have a lot of NWIs at receiver, and then there's a ton of love for Sebastian Joseph Day. It seems a little bit of Dylan Radin sprinkled in, it appears.
Okay, that's not surprising. So let's talk about NWI up top because that's the obvious number one guy folks want to bring back, and for good reason, right? He's an exciting player. Had a breakout year last year, maybe due to some necessity, as well as him just being a talented player. But I'm not trying to take away what was a very exciting year for him, taking the step as what he was perceived as like a fourth or fifth option receiver, a guy that you could trust to be a rotational fourth or third receiver on your team. And this season for the Titans, he ended up by production being like, receiver 2. So that being said, looking at what contract he was on last year, obviously he was on a 1-year minimum tender, I believe. Base salary of 1.8, guaranteed money, $500,000, cap number 1.2, basically nothing. He has earned himself significantly more money than that. And looking at Spotrac's valuation, they've got his valuation at 8.9, so just under $9 million a year AAV. I'd imagine the deal he gets with the Titans or whoever he's getting a deal with this upcoming season is going to be a multi-year deal, maybe a 2 or 3 year deal. He is only 28 years old, never had injury concerns. He is about as clean a prospect in free agency as you can find. He's got a very firm, limited ceiling. And so I guess my question at the chat and follow up, all of you who want NWI, what's the amount of money that makes you say, I'd love to have him back, but can't justify that?
Like a breaking point, right? Like
right. What's the breaking point? Is it if I told you the cost for NWI is a 2-year, $20 million contract? Are you making that deal for a guy that again, ideally is going to be your third or fourth receiver? That remains true to me. I just don't know about that, man. I love Nick. I love him personally. He's a great guy to work with, to interact with. I love him on the field. As Titans Cal says, anything over 9 million AAV and they're out. MB says, hell not. Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad to see that even the most ardent bring NWI back folks are not losing their minds. Frazier says he's out at 8 million for NWI, which I think is reasonable. 8.5 for Bearded Kunu. 12 is too much for Deshaun. Holy.
Someone said in the chat too that like a Tutu Atwell contract where I think it was only 10 mil a year, right?
That was 10 a year for
signed.
2
so like that
years,
hurts your chances a little bit. Like at least like the market kind of dictating it a little bit.
Yeah, we do have to recalibrate our brains with the way that the cap has moved up. That's a part of it, right? And so like that was one of the things for me when we saw that come down for him. I was like, wow. And then I thought about it for a moment. I was like, as a percentage of the new cap, I get it.
Right.
I get it.
Right.
So, Yuri Barkin says 3-year, 21 million, 13 guaranteed. That would be right in the sweet spot for me. If that's a deal you could get NWI for right there, I'm in. I'm in on that. 100% I am. I just don't know if I'm going much more than that. I really don't.
Yeah. Because it depends on the role, right? I think you said it perfectly. It's like you can like him as a player, but it's also admitting that he shouldn't be wide receiver 1 for sure. He probably shouldn't even be wide receiver 2.
Correct.
It's about what his role in the offense is, and then you have to kind of quantify that with if he's wide receiver 3 in your offense, how much is that worth to you, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's a great person to have, but is it worth having at 9+ a year? Like that's the conversation you have to have and the jockeying point of this discussion just overall.
And Cody S asks, who would be number 2? Well, they got to go find that guy. Like that's why wide receiver is so high on your list of needs this offseason, Cody, is that they don't have him. And NWI, for as much money you want to pay him is not going to be, not going to be that guy this year, or ever. It's just you don't. He can be. You don't want him to be. If he is, things have gone badly. I'll just say it that way. So that's NWY. Let's throw that graphic back up here and talk about some other guys. Like you said, some folks mentioned. Were folks in the comments saying Stonehouse? Surely they were, right?
So yes, a bunch of
Okay.
people were saying Stonehouse. They were
Now,
also
again, to be
saying
fair,
Quandre.
Stonehouse he's a restricted free agent, so they're going to bring him back. Not worried about that, but he's definitely at the top. Like, obviously, you bring back Stonehouse, so I'm going to go ahead and put him number one on the got to bring him back scale.
Sure.
Who else on here do they have to bring back? To me, I see one other guy scanning. I only see one other guy that they really. I see two guys that I think that they absolutely should bring back.
I'm interested because we when we were planning the show beforehand, we talked about some of the players that were on the list, but we didn't go in depth as far as like our actual perspective on who those players should be that they should bring back. So I'm kind of curious to see if a couple guys that are in my mind are the same type of players you're thinking about as far as like retaining.
Well, the other guy that I think they absolutely have to bring back, and this is kind of niche, but I think Titans fans who've paid close attention are going to agree with me. Justin Hardy is a guy that they have to bring back this year. I had a conversation with Sam and Nick Suss on Locker Cleanout Day with Ryan Stonehouse just about the special team season as a whole, the disaster that it was, the way that it fixed itself in the back half of the season. By then, nobody cared, and the storybook on Colt Anderson was already written. And Ryan would not shut up about Justin Hardy and the impact that his addition made as a guy that he's been in the league for a long time. We know him to be a special teams ace, to be a seasoned veteran as a gunner. I'm not going to say single-handedly fixed the Titans special teams, but his impact in that room and on the field was astronomical. And the difference you saw on tape between a guy like him who knew exactly what he was doing and a guy like, I won't single guys out. All the other gunners they had running before then that were leaving some things to be desired. It was night and day. And he's going to, again, what's he going to cost you? Nothing. So you have to find a way to, even if it's a little bit of an overpay, like, you feel like you should be paying him, a vet min, but you have to pay $2.5 million for him. Bring him back to help Bones Fossil, the new special teams coach, get it figured out, turn it around in a hurry, make it a strength of the team in year 2 for the Callahan regime. I think is a big deal. A couple other names that I'll throw out and get your opinion on, Ryan.
Yeah.
When I just go down the list here. Of course, NWI is a guy I would like to offer a contract to NWI. Absolutely. I would like to offer a contract to Dylan Radins. I would like to offer a contract to Sebastian Joseph Day. I would like to offer a contract to Jack Gibbons. I would like to offer a contract to Quandre Diggs. And I would like to offer a contract to the other two specialists. Morgan Cox, no reason not to keep him around. He's been your guy forever. And then Nick Foles. Yeah, offer him a contract. He's been nails. Why not? So those are the guys that immediately stick out to me. NWI, Dylan Radins, Sebastian Joseph Day, Jack Gibbons, Quandre Diggs, and the rest of the specialist crew. What about you?
So Quandre Diggs was the guy that I talked about, and I mentioned him a little bit briefly on our call when we were setting up for the show. I know that he had a Liz Frank, right? That obviously cut his season shorts, but the timeline I think matches up well with him being available for this offseason workouts and all that type of stuff. So
yes,
in that vein, in that regard, I do think that he would be a very interesting player to bring back because when Quandre Diggs is healthy, he's a very good safety. And it seemed like, and you would know this a lot better than myself, you watching a little bit more intently on Titans, it seems like he was playing well before he got injured last year, right? Like he was doing a pretty good job at safety. So I think that he is a veteran leader as well.
He's brother, he was doing a great job at safety. Yes, he was doing a great job.
And he's a good football player ultimately, right? And right now we've talked about it. You have needs at right tackle. You have needs at quarterback, obviously. You have needs at wide receiver. You have needs at pass rusher. That's a lot of needs. I think that safety, making that more of a secondary need going into the draft of trying to find some depth or maybe some rotational guys, that type of thing, I think that is the best case scenario potentially for Tennessee. So, yes, I think that a lot of people had said Quandre Quadre Diggs in the chats, and I agree 100% with that one. That would be like not number one on my list, but that would be very high on my list of guys that I would absolutely want to bring back if he is interested in coming back.
A couple of things there because you make some really great points.
Mhm.
First of all, the idea of making a position a secondary need going into the draft. This is where the rubber meets the road for the Titans, and how far they stretch their philosophy is going to be tested the next couple of days. We'll see. I'm curious to see what it looks like. But the reality is, we know they want to use free agency as a supplemental piece of their team building and build of the draft. But they only have 8 picks and 2 in the top 100, and they have 10 quadrillion needs. So they're going to have to be. I think folks have it in their minds that, oh, the way that they were big players in free agency last year, we saw how that went for them. This year they're going to just be like barely involved. They're going to be seriously involved in free agency in a volume standpoint, from a volume standpoint, not from a quality standpoint, not from a dollars and cents standpoint. It's going to look a lot like what Washington did last year, where they signed 26 free agents and 21 of them were 1-year deals. It's going to be a lot of swings in the B, C, D, E, F, G tier of guys who are not inspiring on their own necessarily, but they build up that depth that the Titans didn't have last year. And that's one of the biggest things I think philosophically that's going to look different. Last year, they spent big money on guys that are they're starters. Sorry, I got a text that just completely broke my chain of thought here. They spent a lot of money on
Don't you love that?
Yeah. They spent a lot of money on stars that were a mixed bag of good for them, but they neglected the depth entirely. And when you saw them need to lean on their depth throughout the season, like most NFL teams do, it showed in a big way. It was a stars and scrubs build, and their stars weren't even good enough necessarily to be considered stars all the time. I think this Titans team is going to take a very different, measured approach to as even keel a roster as I think if last year the dip in roster talent was this dramatic roller coaster down after you got through the first couple of guys, I think the goal this year is to keep it a nice linear decline from 1 to 53 as best they can. And that's going to be guys that you bring in on cheap 1-year deals that aren't super inspiring. Now, on the Diggs point, looking at the Liz Frank injury, I think is going to, in a morbid way, keep his number low, right? Naturally speaking, he was fantastic for them before he got hurt. I think it was either week 8 or 9 that he went down. Before then, he was their fixer on defense. When you talk to the Titans defensive staff, when you watch on tape, he was the guy making them right a lot of the time. And you saw, Titans fans that watched saw that the defense in the front half of the season and the back half of the season fell apart, in large part due to the back-to-back weeks of losing Ernest Jones in a trade and Quandre Diggs to injury. Losing those guys at the spine of the defense, who were the fixers for the team on defense, cost them dearly, and it showed up in a big way once they were gone. And so keeping Diggs around, the point is, we're going to talk about a couple of safeties in free agency, not on the team here in a minute, who the Titans are eyeing publicly. They need badly quality safety play and some depth at safety. And that's not to say that Amani Hooker is a bad player. He is. He's just not a guy that is, I wouldn't call him a fixer. I wouldn't call him a guy that's maybe great when he has to babysit, right?
Yeah.
And so a guy like Quandre Diggs can handle that. And last year he's on a contract of, let's see. Last year it was a $1.2 million base salary, $3 million cap hit. So a $3 million contract, 1 year, 3. The OTC valuation for 2025 is 1.5. I think he'll get more than that. But if it's around the same number, a 1 year, $3 million contract, a 1 year, $4 million contract, I say bring him back. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it makes a lot of sense. If I can pivot real quick before we get into the free agency preview of guys that might be on a wish list type of thing in the next segment. Interior offensive line. You mentioned Dylan Radins. Is Brunskill in consideration to bring back in any type of capacity? I know that obviously Radins played a lot of right guard last year, and I know that that's obviously a big hole right now. I guess two-parter is how much are we pushing to bring Brunskill back in this scenario? And then 2 would be for Dylan Radins to bring back what is your outlook for him? Is he bring back to be the full time starting right guard? Is he a purely competition guy? Like, what is the outlook potentially for Radens?
Yeah, so let's get to ratings in a second. I am glad you brought up Brunskill. Brunskill and Levin are guys to me that I think you make an offer to at your price point, maybe half expecting them to be interested in looking to get more money elsewhere. But they are valuable depth guys to have. And you saw them both get leaned on last year and not completely blow it, right? They are valuable swing swing centers and swing guards. And they're also both good locker room guys. I know that for a fact. They are both great glue guys in that room. And so I think you make an offer to them. With Radens, we're going to talk about that in the context of, I think, the rest of the O-line market that we have coming up here shortly. Let me look up real quick his OTC valuation, just see, because of course he's coming off of his rookie contract. So this is going to be his first opportunity to get paid. That's not to say that he's necessarily due a significant amount of money based on the way that he performed in his rookie contract, but I think that he's a guy that is valuable to a team. And the OTC valuation, around $4 million. Yeah, see that, I think that that's just like the system being wrong. I don't think that's correct at all. I think that it'll be more than that. I think that he'll end up getting, if it's closer to 10 than it is to 5 million a year. And I think it'll be a 2 or 3 year deal for him.
Well, there's just so many. There's just so many not great offensive lines in the NFL, right? So like, there's such a high
right.
demand for like at least solid offensive linemen overall. So that's why I was mostly curious because he is a guy that you're probably going to have to raise that price a little bit to your conversation point, right? And would you still? I guess I'm looking for like the outlook for him potentially. Is he the unquestioned starter? Is he a guy that you are being honest with and being like, hey man, we're bringing you back at this price point. That's great, but you're still gonna have to compete to start. Like it's this is not just you're handed a starting job. So maybe we're still looking in other options in free agency. Maybe we're looking in draft, like just the context of Dylan Radens returning potentially to this team.
To me, it depends on what their plan is at right tackle. And what I mean by that is the way that I talked about Dylan Radens last year, and this is how I believe him to be. I think that he is a starting capable offensive lineman in the NFL. But if he's going to be a starter for you on your offensive line, he needs to be your worst starter. He needs to be worried about his job and his job alone. He needs to not have to pull any additional weight than what is his to pull at the right guard position. And he is a guard, and you don't see him as a guy that has inside-outside versatility. That's not what he is at this point in his career. It's not what he's going to be going forward. So if you can bring him back on a less than $10 million a year, 2-year, 3-year deal, and have him be your right guard, that's fine. But you need to have a pretty serious plan at right tackle, because when right tackle falls apart, or center, but obviously right tackle more likely to, then he starts to take on water. The bleeding starts, and it's bad. Now, there are, we're going to talk about here in a minute, some guys that are guard free agents who would be upgrades in my mind. It's maybe slight, but upgrades over
Right.
Dylan Radens, more reliable to be that right guard. And if they don't feel like they have a super firm plan, whether it be in free agency or in the draft, to address that right tackle position, I think you need to bring in competition, whether you keep Radens or not. You offer him the contract that you're willing to pay. If he wants to walk, that's fine. Nice having you. You bring in a couple guys to compete for that right guard spot, and you bring in a couple guys to compete for that right tackle spot, and you try to get better in the aggregate. So
Yeah.
if
I
they've
mean,
got a big plan at tackle, then bring him back. If they don't, I feel less good about it.
sure. Well, and because I was looking just about the projected interior offensive line class free agency wise, and it's quality, right? Like there's not a lot of tackles on the market because tackles don't really hit the market often because teams value that position so heavily. But the guard class isn't bad. I mean, we'll talk about that
Yeah,
obviously in
that's
the
it.
second
Don't
section,
spoil
in
it.
the
Don't
next
spoil it.
section. But just some context of whether you want to bring Dylan Radens back or not is going to be heavily dependent on the guard class of free agents that we're going to talk about here shortly.
All right, now I'm sending the second question here in the comments. Which Titans free agent are you happiest to see go? And what I want to specify with this question is, who's the guy on this list, and I'll throw it back up there, that you're afraid the Titans might re-sign, that you do not want them to re-sign? So take a look at the 30 guys that are set to become free agents. Who on here could you see the Titans bringing back that you don't want them to? And I'm going to try to read the minds of the comments. I'm gonna guess maybe Jack Gibbons is on that list. I'm gonna guess maybe Luke Gifford's on that list. I'm gonna guess maybe folks are not crazy about Nick Van Nett. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring him back. I wouldn't hate if they bring him back, but I could see people not being crazy about that. I don't know. There's Jerome Baker. I don't think they want him back, but that would be a real shame if they did. I don't know. Comments. Let's see what the comments are saying. Who are they afraid the Titans are going to bring back here?
Yeah. In the comments now, we have JR that kicked us off pretty quickly with Tyler Boyd was his selection. Daniel
Sure.
said Mason Rudolph. Titans Kyle also said Mason Rudolph.
Fair.
We have Josh McDaniels, not the John McDaniels. I'm sorry, I was like not to be confused with the NFL coach. Said Jerome Baker. We had another Jerome Baker. I'm not going to read the second part of that. So we have Tyler Boyd in this one as well. Nick Foles, which is supposed to be Nick Folk, but we've talked about that endlessly in the chat. We know it's Nick Folk, the kicker. We had a string of a list here from Steven who said Mason Rudolph, Julius Chestnut, and Tyler Boyd. Doesn't want any of those guys back. Edward said NPF, which
he's under contract, my friend.
But he's on the contract. But yeah, Jerome Baker from Jason Brown. Someone said all of them. Yes, let all 30. Let all 30.
All right, let's get real, Tall Texan. So dramatic. Tall Texan always in the comments, drama queen.
Let all 30 go. Cap says Mason Rudolph, Julius Chestnut, another one from Darius Horton. We have Jerome Baker or Jack Gibbons from Jake Hughes. So he's good with one of them not being retained. Deshaun said Mason Rudolph. We had Mason Rudolph and Tyler Boyd from Patrick. We have Tyler Boyd and Jerome Baker from Anthony Barton. We have Baker and Colt Anderson. Was Colt Anderson on that list somewhere?
Colt Anderson is a special teams coach who is no longer employed.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say.
So,
okay,
yeah,
cool.
No, not a player.
Kirk Reynolds, Mason Rudolph, Jerome Baker, Mike Brown, and Julius Chestnut from Rashid Jenkins. So whole lot of Mason Rudolph talk. So not a big fan of the backup quarterback that will not be retained. So
yeah, the common theme here, and I don't expect him to be retained. The common theme here is Mason Rudolph, and then a bunch of guys that Titans fans seem to, these are guys that we all know to be. Every team has guys you just can't seem to get rid of that are back into the roster guys, and it's just like they can't. They're the cockroach of the team. You can't kill this guy. That's what those guys are all, representing there. And so I agree. Like Julius Chestnut, it's been a fun ride. Tyler Boyd, thanks for stopping by. Who else we're focused? Jerome Baker. Guys, rest assured, they're not bringing back Jerome Baker. Don't worry about that. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about those guys as well. All right, we got some new free agents that could potentially be new to the Titans, guys that are free agents around the league. That we're going to talk about here a little bit at the end of the show. We're going to not spend too much time on it because Monday morning we'll be doing the show before, I think tampering starts at 10 or something. It's in the morning. I think the show's going to happen. What I know is the show's going to happen before the legal tampering begins. And so we're going to need to talk about some plans then as well. So we're going to save a little bit of it, but we're going to just do a little preview of some of our favorite guys. So you know what? We'll go ahead and send that question in the chat here. Who is the free agent that you are dying to see the Titans land come next week? Who's the free agent around the league that you want the Titans to have on their roster by next week's end? Sending that in the chat. Give you guys a second to think about that. While you're thinking about that, let me tell you about our friends over at the Bone and Joint Institute of Tennessee. They are fantastic. They are the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedics and sports medicine care over there at boneandjointtn.org. Whenever you get hurt in life, you have to know who to trust. The Bone and Joint Institute is located in Franklin with over a dozen specialists who can help you through any type of injury. They have a state-of-the-art rehab facility on campus to help you recover. Bone and Joint can do everything under one roof for your convenience. They have a clinic, testing, imagery, surgery, rehab. To schedule an appointment today, just go to boneandjointtn.org.
Make sure, as I can't hit the unmute button, make sure.
Like Ryan, you there?
Button. Yes, I know. I literally couldn't hit the unmute button.
That's
Make sure, folks, you are hitting that like button. Of course, we're about to hit into some free agency, a little bit of a wish list for the Tennessee Titans entering this legal tampering period and then eventually getting into the full scope of free agency. Make sure you hit that like button if you're following us on YouTube, if you're on Twitch, if you are on Facebook. Make sure you're sharing to all your favorite friends, your Titan folks, and make sure that you are locked in on a Friday morning. And as always, in the chat, invite people into here. A lot of great conversation. Free agency frenzy is just beginning. So make sure all your Titans friends are well aware that A to Z Sports is live here on a Friday morning.
All right. So the question was posed: who is the free agent that you're dying to see the Titans land? Ryan, I'll send you the comments. Who are the folks wanting to see land in Tennessee?
There are a whole lot of Javon Hollands. We had Mike that said Javon Hollands in here. We had Orlando, who said he wants a Joey Bosa to come on down. Zach
Okay.
Goodman also said that he wants Joey Bosa. We have Ryan with the Nick Bolton. That was the first Nick Bolton I saw in the chat, I think, so far. We had another Javon Holland from Curtis. We had a Joey Bosa from William Powell. We have an Evan Ingram from Cody S., who was just recently released, obviously. John McDaniel says that he would like Tyler Lockett's. Devin Duvernay, a little bit of a off the wall one there from Steven. Another Holland from Darius Horton. We have a Gardner Minshew mentioned from Tall Texan.
Sure, why not?
Lewis Chesney says Mike Evans, not a free agent, so going to skip over that one. We have Jake Hughes, who says Jedrick Wills and Javon Hollands. He would like both of those to come on down. Jason Brown says Ronnie Stanley. We have Joey Bosa's all around, Javon Hollands. Mark Swan, would like Mekhi Becton to come in to play right guard, it appears. Kenneth Goodwin. There was a good one up the top a little bit. Kenneth Davidson says he would like Will Fries, he would like Jenkins, Becton, or Cam Robinson. Need offensive line. Lewis Chesney says DJ Chark. I think he's just messing with us at this point. Orlando
No, he
Jones
loves Chark. Don't worry about it.
Does he? Rashid Jenkins. Sam Darnold. He's a Sam Darnold guy. I want Sam Darnold to come on down.
I like it. Swing big. I like it.
Yeah. We have a Joe Noteboom reference from the Los Angeles Rams here, or Will Hernandez, offensive guard, or Javon Holland, free safety from the Miami Dolphins. So as we kind of work down the list, Easton, it seems like there is a overwhelming amount of people that would like Javon Holland, and then a mixture of offensive line flavor in this conversation.
Yeah, so let's start with Holland, and I'd be curious to see if we ran this question before that news came out from, I think it's Cameron Wolf on NFL Network, who's the one that brought that up first. I'd be curious to see how many folks answered Javon Holland. I think they're just interested in Holland, mostly because the Titans need safety bad, and they seem to be interested in one of the best safeties on the market. Now, don't get me wrong. Holland would be a big upgrade for the Titans. He'd be a big help for them on the back end. He could be your fixer. He's coming off of a contract, a 4-year contract, rookie contract with the Dolphins, where he's probably going to demand, in that report from Cameron Wolf, he's probably going to demand maybe somewhere in the $15 million range, which would make him one of the 3 highest paid safeties, I think. I'm going to look that up. Paid safeties in the NFL. Who is atop this list? Jamal Adams was at one point. That's how the mighty have fallen. This is just taking forever to load, so we'll see. But either way, Derwin James is up there. Budda Baker is up there. Minkah Fitzpatrick is up there. Xavier McKinney last year was a big get and was up there. Jesse Bates was up there. So if he gets $15 million, I believe that would make him the 7th highest paid safety. Nestled in between Jesse Bates with the Falcons and Kyle Duggar with the Patriots. That feels roughly appropriate to me for a Javon Holland. And we talked earlier in the show about guys that the Titans would have to bend their rules for a little bit. He would be one of those guys. That's not that's an A tier bucket that they'd be shopping in. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't be a big help for them. And he's a young player, and maybe that's the justification for why he's one of the guys they give more than a 1 or 2 year deal to. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take serious money commitment and a multi-year contract and outbidding the other teams that are interested in him. Because that's one of the things. It's the only leverage the Titans have this offseason is that either they win with money or they do not win with guys, because nobody is choosing Tennessee, right? That's just the bitter reality of it right now. Nobody is choosing Tennessee. And as Andre says in the comments, I like that Holland is still young. There are some good safeties in the draft, though. That is the question they have to ask themselves. As we talked about on the mock draft 2 days ago, there are guys that can be found on day 3 in this draft who are in. That's the nature of the safety position. Like you can find starting safeties on day 3 in pretty much any NFL draft. They're going to have to decide whether or not, those guys need to develop, and they're not for sure a hit like a Javon Holland is going to be. You have to weigh those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because I'd be curious to see what the Titans' perspective would be if they did make a splash like a Javon Hollins, what they would do with the rest of the safety crew. Like, do you still want to bring back Quandre Diggs at maybe a little bit of a cheaper deal because he's coming off the injury? Do you still want to explore safety depth at some point in the draft? It's kind of interesting, man. But I think someone put in the chat, and I verified this a couple seconds ago. Javon Holland is still only 25 years old, right? So, like, he's also not only a splash free agency signing, excuse me, he's also a guy that could be a foundational piece for your defense, right? Because then looking forward, you could say, who are the foundational pieces on the defense? You're going to say Jeff Simmons, obviously. You're going to say T'Vondre Sweat, but then now you're going to be able to throw a player like a Javon Holland into the mix, and all those guys are still very young, right? So I think that is a very interesting core, and I I'd be open to it. I mean, depending on what the price tag is, and I know Holland's coming off a little bit of, I guess, his down year comparative to what he was, previous couple for Miami. But when you're on a bad football team, that typically tends to happen, that you have kind of a down year on a bad football team. So he'd be a very interesting player, I think, to kind of look into.
So, Ryan, who are a couple of guys that you've got your eye on in free agency this year? We came in knowing that we'd talk about a couple of them. Again,
Yeah.
I think the Titans are most likely to be shopping in the cheaper bins. But, when you look
Yes.
at guys like, I'm just going to run through, here's a list. This is a list from The Ringer, which somebody that I know over there runs this list, and they've got them ranked by what they're expected to be paid. Nick Bolton is a guy that's brought up, obviously. Justin Reed, a couple of Chiefs there. Chase Young, who we're kind of expecting to remain in New Orleans, but he's technically an edge out there on the market. And then you get into the Hassan Reddick, Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, Carlton Davis, Malcolm Kuntz, or maybe an Ernest Jones reunion. Hello. Will Fries, if you want a guard option. Who's some of the guy kind of vamping for you there to give you a chance to get your notes in order? Who are you thinking?
It's funny because you mentioned one guy that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about two undervalued edge potentials here in this class, and one of them is Malcolm Kuntz that you mentioned. He's obviously coming over from the Raiders. I thought he was going to have a breakout year this year, Easton, because if you look at his 2023 season, 8 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 17 hits on the quarterback. He had some production in 2023, and you were kind of expecting him to take that next step in 24, but the problem was he had a preseason knee injury, right? Mm-hmm. So that, though, could make him very affordable. I do think if Malcolm Kuntz was healthy and he had maybe a potential breakout season, he's probably, one, maybe back with the Raiders, but two, he's going to be worth a whole lot more right now. I think that if he is able to get back to his 2023 film and continue to build on that, this is a guy that can add to this pass rush room. Again, 2023 and only an 11 game starter in the season, 8 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 17 quarterback hits. We're going to hyper focus on the Joey Bosa names of the world that are going to get a nice payday because they are who they are. But a guy like a Malcolm Kuntz, I think, could be a little bit of an underrated player, as can be Dayo Odeyingbo, who is a free agent out of the Indianapolis Colts. Another guy, he's a different body type. Malcolm Kuntz is more of your 6'3", 250 kind of stand-up guy. Dayo can stand up at times, but Dayo can also put his hand in the dirt if you're talking about a team that wants to play 3 and 4 man fronts. He's more in the 6'6", 265, 275 pound range, somewhere in that ballpark. But another guy, a little bit of a down year in 2024, but 2023, he showed a lot of signs. 8 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 17 hits on the quarterback. Both these guys are still very young as well. They just finished up their rookie contracts. So as a couple cheaper options at edge and then add more through the draft, I think a Malcolm Kuntz or a Dayo Odeyingbo could be very interesting free agency targets for a team like the Tennessee Titans.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think that those two guys are absolutely should be on the radar. And that's that is the tier of guys that if they're going to it, and they have to, they need two starting edges. That's the reality for the Titans right now. They need to find one who can be a serviceable 2 before they head into the draft and try to find their 1. That's the most likely path for them to reasonably address both of those positions. That's just the reality of it. So those are the type of guys that I could see them maybe throwing a little bit extra money at just to make sure that they lock them down and feel like they're in a better place heading into a very deep edge class in the draft. A couple of comments here. Rice School, we mentioned Ernest Jones. He said, isn't Ernest Jones injured? It did come out earlier this week that Ernest Jones dealing with I don't remember, knee, hip. I think it's a knee. And that he had surgery that, that is going to complicate things for him. We're running out of time here, so I'm just going to mention, I'm going to go to the offensive line category. And again, on Monday morning, we'll have time to talk about some more of these guys that are on our lists. But 3 guys that I would say make the most sense to bring in to at least compete with Dylan Radins, but probably be a better option than Dylan Radins should they retain him to play that right guard spot. And if you're just looking at the top options, the top guards this year, Mekhi Becton, Kevin Zeitler, James Daniels, Will Fries, Tevin Jenkins, Aaron Banks, Patrick McCarry. The guys that I kind of have highlighted are, I think Will Fries from Indianapolis would be an upgrade. I think that Tevin Jenkins from Chicago would be an upgrade. And I think that James Daniels, a player that I think maybe the least known on this list from a name value standpoint, James Daniels from Pittsburgh, would be a nice upgrade. All 3 of those guys I trust quite a bit. I think you're going to – Kevin Zeitler would be great. I think you're going to be priced out of that. Mekhi Becton would be nice, but he's on the older side. Sorry, not on the older side. He's on the more injury concerning side.
And he's probably going to make decent money after the year he just had in Philadelphia as well. So the market might be a little high on him too.
Right. The combination of the price for him, like Zeitler, but also the injury concern has me worried about somebody like him. Patrick McCarry, Aaron Banks, those guys that I have highlighted there, Fries, Daniels, Jenkins. Those are kind of the sweet spot for me of guys that I think, again, maybe you bring one in and you re-sign Dylan Radins and you see if the younger Radins couldn't make another leap this offseason, make a push to have the starting job, then you've got good depth either way. Or maybe you just bring these guys in to be your starter over top of them. So those are the guys that I'm watching the offensive line. Again, a lot more free agency talk we can go through. I'll probably have some articles out on A2Zsports.com this weekend about some guys to keep an eye on the offensive and defensive side of the ball for the Titans. So keep an eye out for that. Be back here on Monday. We've got one more segment for you before we get out of here. And that is, of course, on a Friday. Ain't that good news? Shout out to our friends at Wilson County Hyundai. Make them a part of your car buying experience today over at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. Jump into the comments here before we get out on a Friday. What is your good news? Share your good news in the comments. I will kick us off, Ryan.
Yep.
My good news is that this week has been the first full week that our daughter has slept through the night every single night, which has been
it's the best feeling in the world.
Right. It's amazing. I feel well rested for these shows that we've been doing. I've been on the show more often this week, but it's not even fazed me because I've been getting some decent sleep, needed it bad after the combine. So shout out to my daughter for being the best little girl, sleeping in her bed all night long, not bothering mommy and daddy. Has been fantastic.
Well, unfortunately, on the other end, some bad news before I get into my good news, I guess.
That's not what the prompt is, Ryan. Come on, man.
You just made me think, and I was like, since I just got back from Indianapolis, my 4-year-old has been in my bed every single night to cuddle with daddy, which is not the good news of this week.
Go away. Yeah.
The good news is that 2 days ago, Easton, I received a text message from the guy that cuts our lawn every single year. And he said, hey, it's time to start getting back on the schedule here, which means what, my friends? Winter is almost over.
Oh, you're a winter hater, huh?
Oh, well, I live here in Jersey, man. So like our seasons are a little rough.
Fair.
You know, it's been a little cold recently, right? So I have a little glimmer of hope to say warm weather, nice weather is on the horizon. So that's my good news of the day. That nice little quick text from the lawn guy to get the schedule working told me that winter is almost over.
Love that. Zachary Goodman in the chat. Good news. SoCon basketball tournament is this weekend. UTC has a good chance to win the men's and women's tournament. So watch out for the University of Tennessee Chattanooga coming in hot. Their basketball teams. As says, new baby boy Elijah is home, a week old. Great news. Good luck to you. Probably not sleeping through the night just yet, but a blessing nonetheless. Daniel, good news. My house guests have finally left after 5 weeks. 5 weeks. Who are these guests? Those are squatters. Get them out of your home.
I know you need to charge them, man. Some back pay on that.
Yeah. Are you getting rent money? I mean, that's a month and a quarter of rent right there. Vanessa says, good news. My divorce is almost over. That sounds like a real headache. Hopefully that red tape and paperwork is over for you soon. Ethan says, good news. American Idol starts Sunday. Still got some diehard American Idol fans out there. All right. Fair enough.
I didn't even know American Idol was still a thing. Not throwing shade.
It is. Lou Chesney says Drake versus SIU at noon. Take notes, Orange people. All right. It's a big Drake game coming up this afternoon. Richie G, good news. Foles is officially a Titan. Easton and Bobby, breaking news we didn't know. What? Did this happen?
You had Nick Folk listed as Nick Foles on your.
Oh, did I?
So,
oh,
yes.
whoops. Okay,
people
well, yeah.
People were talking about it in the chat. It was like, why would you sign a quarterback to be your
I frantically made that list. It was way longer than I thought it was going to be. So that graphic I was just cranking out right before the show.
Yeah.
D. Christophel, good news. I have a horrible back that I get compensation from the military for and had a bad week. Went to the chiropractor and I'm finally feeling better. That is a relief. Good job to the chiropractor who helped you out.
I love chiropractor changes lives, man. I was not
never
a chiropractor
been to one.
guy.
Maybe I need to go.
I went because I had a little bit of I don't know. I think I pulled like a muscle in my back and probably like 6 or 7 months ago, and I went to the chiropractor for the first time in my life, and it was a miracle, man. Absolute miracle.
Let's see. Good news from Cody S. It's about time for golf weather. Heck yeah, let's go. I got my clubs in my car waiting for a day to get over to the range and start knocking the rust off. I am with you 100%. Andre says winter is a gift from the devil. Disagree hard, but all right. Let's see. Any other good news is here. Denise, we're springing forward. Is that this weekend? We're spring forward? Is that happening?
I think so. Sometime soon, yeah.
So we lose. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Hate that so much. Yeah, 5 weeks is. I'm still stuck on the house guest. 5 weeks. Those are not guests any longer. That's
a renter. That's not a guest. That's a renter.
Yeah, that's a tenant. Let's see. Any more good news from Jill? Good news. My husband was released to return to work post hip replacement surgery. Now just needs a work physical. That's exciting. Good for him.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Jay says he's been accepted as Survivor season 150. Check out Jay. In 50 years, he'll be on your televisions on CBS. All right, that's about it. That's about it. So that's our good news on a Friday. Last good news is that we're done. We get to get out of here. No more shows until Monday. Big week coming up next week with the legal tampering period beginning Monday morning. We'll be back all week next week talking about reacting to the Titans and their moves. Hey, check out this weekend. We've got a number of videos coming on the YouTube channel. So don't check out until Monday morning. Got another Titans draft interview series episode coming later today. I sat down with Ben Solak, my buddy Ben Solak at ESPN, while we were at the Combine. And we had a great conversation about how to fix the Titans. He's going to fix the Titans for you later today on the YouTube channel. So check that out. He's the man. And then we got a couple more videos coming for you on Saturday and Sunday. So check all those out. Like the show before you go. Subscribe to the channel. For Ryan Roberts, I'm Houston Freeze. We'll talk to you next week.